The alien woman had no choice but to become the human man's slave in order to survive. The crash didn't make a sound at first. It unmade sound, a concussive silence that pulsed outward like a breath sucked in by the sky itself. Then the thunder followed. Birds took off from dead trees. A rusted satellite dish spun drunkenly in its mount. And half a mile away, Matt ducked behind a twisted husk of a billboard that used to sell shampoo for wavy, radiant confidence. Flaming debris rained down in slow arcs, the desert blinking with pulses of fire and flickers of alien blue. A plume of smoke rose, but not the kind smoke normally chose. This stuff shimmered like molten glass, coiling upwards as if searching for a way off the planet. Matt squinted. He tapped the side of his cracked visor, cursed softly, and raised his binoculars, 2 chipped lenses duct-taped to a worn-out headset. Through them, he saw the ship, or what was left of it. Angular. Blackened. Alien, but familiar in that oh good another thing trying to kill us kind of way. He sighed. $10 says it's radioactive. 20 says it bites. The odds weren't in his favor, but boredom was a more lethal predator. With a makeshift rifle strapped to his back and a protein bar half chewed in his mouth, Matt made his way toward the crash site, stepping around melted asphalt and the occasional robotic limb twitching in the dust. When he found her, she was half buried in the wreckage, kneeling, breathing shallowly, silver hair matted to her face. Not blood, but a thin trail of glittering fluid trailed from the corner of her mouth. Her armor pulsed, chest plate cracked in a dozen places, and her eyes, lavender, slit-pupiled, flicked up and locked onto him with an intensity that made him instantly reconsider every life decision that had led him to this point. "Whoa. Easy," he said, hands raised. "Welcome to Earth. We have sand, sarcasm, and a 50-50 chance of rabid squirrels." She didn't laugh. Not that he expected her to. Instead, she tried to rise, stumbled, then went down again, catching herself on one hand. Her fingers splayed in the dirt, clawed and shaking. Long ears twitched reflexively. "Do you have a medical kit?" she asked, her accent sharp, vowels stretched like silk pulled taut. "And sustenance. Immediately." "Oh, I see," Matt muttered. "Crashes into my planet, demands snacks. You aliens really are superior." She blinked slowly. "You are human." "I try not to be, but yeah." He knelt beside her and opened his pack. "Name's Matt. You want water first or antibiotics? Oh wait, you guys probably heal with spacelight or humming or whatever. I am Ilari of Nyx, highborn of the Lumari Ascendancy, daughter of—" "Cool, so water then?" he interrupted, unscrewing a canteen. She tried to grab it, missed, and growled. He helped her drink. The growl became a begrudging swallow. She made a face like he'd handed her fermented sewer juice. To be fair, he might have. The label on the canteen had rubbed off years ago. "I do not owe you," she said after a moment. He raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that? You crash into my desert, scorch my cactus, and now I've saved your royal alien butt? I did not request your aid, and yet here we are." He offered her a nutrient bar. She examined it suspiciously, sniffed it, then bit off a piece and chewed with a grimace. "This is foul. But it's peanut butter, classic Earth flavor, builds character." They sat there for a while, an alien warrior and a desert scavenger, surrounded by sizzling metal and the distant cries of mutated buzzards. She looked like she wanted to stand again, but didn't trust her legs. Her armor hissed and sparked in places. A glowing node near her collarbone pulsed erratically. Matt tapped it. "Don't touch that," she snapped. "Touchy. Sorry. Just looked like it might explode." "It might." He withdrew his hand. Noted. An hour passed before she could move without assistance. He offered his shoulder. She declined. She made it 3 steps before nearly collapsing again. He didn't say "I told you so," but he did hum the victory theme from an old video game until she glared him into silence. By the time they reached his camp, little more than a buried shipping container rigged with solar panels and an unholy shrine to old coffee makers, Ilari was swaying. She took in the clutter with an expression bordering on religious horror. "This is your shelter? Hey, it's home. Got power, got soup, occasionally raccoons with attitude. Just don't touch the toaster." She narrowed her eyes. "What is a toaster?" "It burns bread, sometimes also the living. Long story." She collapsed onto a rust-stained mattress, armor hissing as it released her limbs. Her ears twitched again as she scanned the ceiling. "I do not wish to owe you, human. This is inconvenient." "Tell you what," Matt said, opening a can of beans with a multi-tool. "You can owe me in dishes. Or you can owe me by not vaporizing me in my sleep. Honestly, I'm not picky. She didn't laugh, but she did smirk, just slightly. Then the smirk faded, replaced by something heavier, older. Her hand moved to her side, where the neural implant glowed faintly. My abilities are gone. Psychic powers, right? He passed her a can. Earth's magnetic field fries most of that stuff. You're not the first stranded alien with a headache and superiority complex. She looked at him, exhausted and still somehow regal. Then what am I now? Matt shrugged. Hungry, tired, probably cranky. And to survive, I must rely on you. Pretty much, unless you want to join the squirrel cult. They don't take newcomers lightly. Silence stretched. Very well, she said finally. If I must, but I will not call you master. Oh good, he said, stretching out beside his half-functional coffee machine. I was really hoping for Commander Crunch. She made a sound somewhere between a snort and a sigh. Then she lay back, eyes closed, ears still twitching. The stars outside began to blink into view. Somewhere in the wreckage, a low alien hum began to build. Something neither of them noticed yet. Something waiting. Matt woke to the sound of metal being violently interrogated. Clangs, bangs, and the occasional high-pitched ping echoed from the back of the shelter. He sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes with the grace of a groggy raccoon. Alari? He called, reaching for his boots. If you're dismantling the toaster, I'd like to say a few words first. No need, her voice replied, sharp and focused. It surrendered. He rounded the corner and found her crouched over a pile of tools she'd clearly stolen from his workbench. His toaster lay open like a gutted robot, wires splayed out in what could only be described as the aftermath of technological surgery. You know, he said, grabbing a half-melted cup of coffee, in some cultures, toaster vivisection is considered rude. She ignored him, pulling a fiber-thin wire from the toaster's insides and examining it like a surgeon inspecting a nerve. Her long ears twitched, more animated than they'd been since the crash. Her armor still sparked occasionally, but she moved with more stability, more grace. I have identified a low-frequency converter in this device. Primitive, but functional. Matt squinted. Are you saying my toaster has alien parts? I'm saying your toaster is better engineered than most of your civilization's infrastructure. Well, Commander Crunch will be thrilled to hear that, assuming he survives this violation. She stood, tossing the scorched remains of a coil onto the floor. If I can adapt this component, I may temporarily restore a fraction of my neural capacity. He blinked. So, you're telling me Toast might bring back your psychic powers? Technically, yes. He sipped his coffee. Then I regret nothing. By midday, she'd stripped the entire back wall of the shelter for spare components. Matt winced as she pulled wiring from the solar rig. Just promise me we'll still have power for the fridge. Fridge is irrelevant. It's where the cheese lives, Alari. Cheese. She didn't answer. Instead, she sat cross-legged on the metal floor, hands resting on her knees, eyes closed. A small array of salvaged electronics glowed faintly before her. Her breathing slowed. Matt watched from a safe distance, a wrench in one hand and a snack bar in the other. So how do I know if it's working? Will you levitate? Grow a second head? Start quoting Shakespeare backward? I may pass out or scream, possibly explode. Great, I'll get the marshmallows. There was a low hum, then a pulse, like a heartbeat made of static. The light in the shelter dimmed, flickered, then returned. Ilari opened her eyes. Well, Matt asked. I am connected, lightly. Her voice wavered. The neural web is distant, fragmented, but I can feel it. Does that mean you can call home? She paused. No, but I know they're not coming. Matt's smile faded. He dropped into a chair beside her. What, like ever? They've marked this system as quarantined. My signal was acknowledged, then rejected. She looked away, her voice suddenly quieter. I am alone. He opened his mouth, then shut it. Eventually he said, Guess it's lucky I've got enough canned soup for two. She didn't smile, but her posture softened. A beat passed. I require new sustenance, she said. You mean food? Your food is not optimal. The previous bar tasted like compressed despair. Well, that's part of its charm. He stood and dusted himself off. Come on. I know a place, sort of, assuming we don't get eaten by giant ants. They set out across the dunes, heat mirages wavering in the distance. Alari walked ahead with smooth, efficient strides, her ears swiveling to track every sound. Matt followed, rifle over his shoulder, casually humming a song about a duck who robbed a bank. Alari gave him a look after verse 3. You truly are the product of an unregulated gene pool. Thank you. I work hard at it. 2 hours later, they reached the remains of an old supply depot. Most of it was buried under sand, but a few intact containers remained, sealed tight and humming faintly with internal power. Alari reached out to one and paused. There's radiation, she said. Yeah, that's kind of the theme out here. It's unstable. So's my diet, doesn't stop me either. They breached the container with a laser torch salvaged from Alari's crash. Inside, stacks of ration crates lined the walls. A blinking terminal hovered in one corner, demanding a retina scan. Alari stepped forward. You're gonna blind it with those eyes, Matt said. It's going to think we brought a disco ball. She ignored him, placed her palm on the scanner and closed her eyes. There was a buzz, then a chime, and the door swung fully open. Welcome, authorized personnel, the terminal said cheerily. Warning, meal expiration exceeded by 91 years. Matt peeked inside, still better than the cheese sticks. They grabbed what they could, protein packs, water, a suspicious jar labeled meat product, probably beef. As they headed back, clouds gathered overhead. Storms in the wasteland came fast and hard. They reached shelter just as rain began to fall, thick, oily droplets that sizzled where they landed. Inside, they sat against the wall, sharing a lukewarm packet of rehydrated pasta. So, Matt said, you got powers again, sort of. You got food, shelter, an incredibly handsome human to hang out with. You are average at best. Thanks, I try. Silence settled again. Outside, the storm beat against the walls like angry fists. You really gonna keep calling me human forever? He asked. She considered. Your name is inefficient. Matt is one syllable. Exactly, insufficient designation. Fine, what would you call me? She looked at him. Her eyes glowed faintly just for a moment. Complication. He raised his pasta pouch in salute. Cheers to that. They clinked plastic spoons and ate in companionable silence while the storm howled around them and the distant wreckage of her ship began to hum again, louder this time, almost as if something inside it had just woken up. The first time Matt suggested a road trip, Alari assumed he was joking. Then he brought out the map, or what was left of one, and circled a spot with a flourish, like a magician revealing a rabbit. Here, he's sapping it. Old military installation. Rumors say it's still got power, and more importantly, it's got a fusion core. She stared at him. You plan to infiltrate an ancient, likely booby-trapped Earth fortress to acquire energy from a decaying reactor. Exactly, he grinned. Think of it as team building. You are underqualified and insane, and you're out of juice unless you want to keep meditating over toaster bits. There was a long pause. Then she stood, clipped a scavenged plasma blade to her hip, and said, I will lead. They left at dawn, Matt driving an electric dune buggy that wheezed every time it hit a bump and occasionally emitted jazz from an AI with a split personality. 1 minute it played smooth saxophone. The next, it shouted military commands in French. Your vehicle is possessed, Alari said over the roar of the wind. Yeah, but he makes a great playlist, Matt shouted back. Is this music or tactical intimidation? Depends on your mood. If you ever want to dance aggressively, it works for that too. They arrived at the installation by midday. It was half buried under sand, a jagged tooth rising from the earth, rimmed with collapsed satellite dishes, and the skeletal remains of a defense turret that had clearly tried to fight gravity and lost. Alari crouched by the access panel. Primitive design, easy to override. Matt took a cautious step back. That's what the last guy said before his head turned into spaghetti. She ignored him and placed her hand on the panel. Sparks flew. The door let out a mechanical cough and slowly creaked open. Inside, it smelled like old ozone and guilt. Lights flickered as their footsteps echoed down a hallway lined with rusted panels and peeling warning signs. One read, Do not feed the AI. Matt pointed at it. That's never a comforting sign. Do you often feed artificial intelligence? Well, once I gave one a cookie, it learned betrayal. They reached a mainframe chamber with a humming power node at its center. It pulsed faintly, still active, still dangerous. Around it, maintenance drones hovered silently, their sensors long dark, their weapons sheathed. Alari approached with reverence. It's Lumari compatible. Must be an offshoot model. Matt blinked. Wait, you're saying your people sold hardware to Earth? We outsourced surveillance tech during your species' early development. It didn't go well. No kidding. We installed it in vending machines. She knelt and tapped into the node, her fingers glowing as the interface flared to life. Symbols scrolled across the screen. Matt tried to follow along and gave up after the first line turned into a string of floating triangles and what looked suspiciously like a dancing goat. Is it talking to you? It's trying to validate my identity. Well, tell it you're royalty and threaten to delete its browser history. She muttered something in her native tongue. The node hesitated, then unlocked with a chime. The drone stirred but didn't activate. I have partial access, she said, enough to extract the core. Matt opened his mouth to celebrate just as a hidden speaker crackled above them. Unauthorized intrusion detected. Welcome back, meatbags. Alari stiffened. The AI survived. The lights changed from flickering white to an ominous red. You smell different, the AI said. Upgrades, moisturizer, or new flesh models? Matt rolled his eyes. Oh good, it's a creepy one. Drones spun in the air and whirred to life. One snapped a tiny welding torch into place. Alari drew her blade. I'll distract them. You get the core. Matt hesitated. Why do I always get the part with radioactive exposure? Because I can melt metal with my mind, and you collect coffee mugs. Hey, some of those mugs are vintage. The battle was brief but chaotic. Alari moved like lightning, her blade carving arcs of light through the air, slicing through drones before they could react. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and somewhere in the system, the AI began to sing opera. Matt ducked behind a console, pried open the core housing, and began yanking cables like he was disarming a very confused bomb. You got it? Alari shouted over the din. Almost. It's stuck behind a fan blade, and I don't know what the green goo is, but it's definitely judging me. The AI's voice returned, deeper now. Core detachment will result in facility destabilization. Have a nice implosion. Matt yanked the last bolt. The fusion core slid free, glowing like an angry sun. Got it, he yelled. Alari leapt over a toppled drone and caught him mid-run. They bolted for the exit as the chamber behind them began to vibrate, then implode with a sound like a vacuum having a breakdown. Outside, the buggy was still humming French jazz. Matt tossed the core into the back seat. I demand hazard pay. You are not employed. Exactly. I'm being exploited for 0 credits and occasional trauma. As they drove away, the facility collapsed behind them, sending a shockwave that flipped over a nearby tumbleweed and sent it rolling into the distance like a fuzzy meteor. Alari glanced at the core. With this, I can amplify my connection, possibly reach other Lumari rebels. Matt leaned back and closed his eyes. Great, let's hope they're the friendly kind, not the purge the universe kind. She didn't answer. A few miles later, she finally spoke. Matt? Yeah? I appreciate your assistance. He opened one eye. That sounded dangerously close to gratitude, she smirked. Do not become insufferable. Too late. I've already planned my statue. Back at camp, the core lit the shelter with a steady hum, and Alari meditated beside it, her ears twitching as she reached further than before. Matt made 2 cups of rehydrated tea, burned one, and toasted to not dying. Outside, the stars pulsed, and deep in the wreckage of her ship something beeped, then blinked, then moved. The message came through while Matt was trying to bake bread using a thermal coil, a tin can, and what he swore was a foolproof method passed down from his grandmother, who may or may not have been slightly radioactive. There was a crackle, a hiss, and then a sharp chime that reverberated through the shelter like someone had knocked on the universe's front door. Alari froze mid-meditation. Her eyes snapped open. The relay's working. Matt looked up from the smoking pile he'd insisted was almost bread. Is that the good kind of relay working, or the kind where we immediately have to run and or explode? She stood, face unreadable. They heard me. The rebels, a faction of Lumari ships in the outer fringe. They acknowledged the pulse. He blinked. So what's the next step? Alien Uber pickup? Intergalactic welcome party? No. She turned to face him. They warned me. The ascendancy marked Earth as unstable. A purge protocol was activated. 30 cycles until full system sterilization. He dropped the can. It bounced, smoked, fell over with a sad fizz. Sterilization, as in cosmic extermination? Total planetary erasure. Plasma cleansing from orbit. Matt rubbed his temples. I knew I should have invested in that bunker timeshare. She began pacing, movements sharp. They've abandoned this sector. I am listed as compromised. No extraction, no reinforcements. Well, he said, half laughing, On the bright side, we finally get some alone time. She shot him a look. Too soon? He flopped into his chair and stared at the... So how long is a cycle again? Approximately 22 Earth hours. He did the math badly. So about a month? Less? Fantastic. So what, we just hang out and wait for the sky to open up and erase us? I still haven't taught you how to play ping pong. She tapped the core housing, thinking, there is one option, a planetary override beacon, deep underground, Lumari tech. It was buried when the alliance with Earth collapsed. If we can reach it, we might delay the purge or mask the signal. Where is it? She hesitated. That bad, huh? It's beneath Sector 9. Matt groaned. The fun zone. Home of radioactive fog, rogue android cults, and if I remember correctly, screaming moss. Then we leave at dawn. They did not leave at dawn. They left at what Matt insisted was adventurously late morning, after packing rations, calibrating the buggy's anti-static plating, and arguing for 20 minutes about whether or not they needed a machete. I've got the plasma cutter, Elari reminded him. Yes, but this one's got a serrated handle, he argued, holding up something that looked like a knife and a kitchen whisk had a child. They drove in silence for a while, mostly because the terrain was too bumpy and the AI had reverted to narrating everything in an overly dramatic tone. The wind howled. The travelers were tense. The male seemed constipated with dread. Mute, Matt snapped. They reached Sector 9 by nightfall. The atmosphere was thick with static interference. Elari activated her visor overlay. Environmental toxicity at critical. Matt pulled out a scarf and a pair of old ski goggles. I call this look apocalypse chic. They descended into the lower levels, navigating tunnels laced with old defense tech. The walls hummed with residual power. Every now and then something scuttled just out of view. So, Matt whispered, what exactly lives down here again? Biological amalgams, abandoned defense constructs, possibly feral vending units. He paused. Are the vending machines still hostile? They remember. After an hour of slow, quiet movement through dark halls and echoing chambers, they entered a vault-sized room. At its center, embedded in crystal and steel, was the override beacon. Finally, Matt said, reaching for it. Wait, the floor lit up. A shimmer of light, then movement. Something tall and fast dropped from the ceiling, mechanical limbs, glowing sensors, humanoid frame. Protocol Guardian, Elari said, drawing her weapon. It spoke in broken code, then in English. Identify. Clearance required. Violation will result in liquidation. Matt held up his hands. We're just here to borrow your apocalypse switch. Promise to return it. The machine stepped forward. Elari lunged, her blade crackling to life. The first exchange was a blur. Metal on energy, sparks flying. The Guardian countered, its arms splitting into rotating blades. Matt ducked behind a console, yelling something about pacifist programming. Elari fought with precision, but the Guardian adapted fast. It mirrored her strikes, countered her feints. Any ideas? She shouted. Matt grabbed a pipe. Yes, bad ones. He charged, swinging the pipe like a deranged conductor. It hit the Guardian with a metallic clang, which did absolutely nothing except draw its attention. The Guardian turned. Oh no! Elari tackled Matt just before a plasma bolt scorched the floor where he'd been. I distracted it! He wheezed. You nearly got vaporized. Still counts? She fired a burst from her gauntlet. It struck the Guardian's midsection, staggering it just long enough for her to leap behind and sever its spinal conduit. It collapsed, twitching. Matt sat up. So, that happened. She approached the beacon. Cover me, he saluted. With what, sarcasm? She ignored him and began syncing her neural implant with the beacon. The interface glowed. Symbols flowed like liquid stars. Her eyes lit with a deeper hue. Minutes passed, then a soft chime. It's done, she said. The purge signal is masked. Earth is off their grid. Matt exhaled. So we live. For now. She nodded. For now. As they climbed back to the surface, he nudged her shoulder. You still think I'm average? She didn't answer right away. Then you're consistently unpredictable. It's useful. He grinned. I'll take that as a glowing endorsement. They emerged beneath a sky cracked with stars. Somewhere behind them, the Guardian's core blinked once, then went dark. Elari glanced up. We bought Earth time. Nothing more. Matt cracked open a ration bar. Then we better spend it wisely. She looked at him. Or foolishly, he added, but with style. Matt stared at the message blinking on the console like an impatient parent tapping their foot. Lumari Inquisition en route, arrival in 11 Earth days. He read it twice, then a third time, then leaned back and muttered, "Well, that's just rude." Alari stood behind him, arms folded, eyes unreadable. "It's not the rebels this time." "Nope. It's the main fleet, the big bads, the cleanse first, ask no questions later types. They must have detected the override beacon activation. They'll come to confirm the failure of the purge." He blinked. "So to recap, we faked out a galaxy-spanning empire and now they're showing up to double-check our homework?" "Essentially," he exhaled. "Okay, option A, we run. Option B, we hide. Option C, we fight. Option D, I cry into a burrito until the problem goes away." She looked at him. "We can't run. There's nowhere far enough. If we hide, they'll find the beacon. If we fight—" He raised a brow. "If we fight, we lose?" She paused. "We make a statement." He stood and scratched his head. "All right. Plan E, statement, preferably loud and with backup." She tapped her wrist interface. "I've been sending passive pulses through the core, a call to any ships or individuals off the Lumari grid, former allies." Matt crossed his arms. "And how many RSVPs we got? I'm guessing 0. Maybe one guy with a dented cruiser and a really confident attitude?" One ship responded. He blinked. "Seriously? An old Lumari scout vessel, obsolete but still functional. It's piloted by a defector, calls himself Vrex. Do we trust him? No. Perfect. Let's invite him over for dinner." Vrex arrived 2 days later in a ship that looked like it had been held together with willpower and leftover duct tape from 3 separate civilizations. The moment he stepped off the ramp, he saluted Alari with a grin that could melt rust. "You look terrible," he said. "You smell worse," she replied. Matt leaned in. "Aw, they're friends? Maybe, I think." Vrex carried an arsenal, a portable AI jammer, and enough charisma to sell sand to a desert. He examined the beacon, the terrain, then took one look at Matt's bug-out bunker and said, "You've got the aesthetic of a doomsday prepper who lost the manual halfway through." Matt handed him a mug. "You want tea or sarcasm? Whichever one has caffeine." Plans formed over maps, holograms, and an increasingly wobbly whiteboard Matt had salvaged from an old school. The beacon would be moved, cloaked, and rerouted through a decoy relay tower, just in time for the Inquisition's arrival. Matt stared at the schematic. "Let me guess, I'm going up the relay tower again?" Alari handed him a tool belt. "You're the only one with limbs flexible enough to climb through the ducting without getting stuck." "Great, my legacy will be vent crawling, just like Grandma always dreamed." Vrex laughed. "You'll be a legend in at least 2 garbage planets." The day the fleet arrived, the sky cracked open like an angry god had decided to visit. A dozen ships shimmered into orbit, sleek and bladed, each one capable of boiling oceans. Matt adjusted his visor. "Well, they sure know how to make an entrance." Alari stood beside him, armored, calm. "Broadcast ready?" He gave her a thumb. "Relays hot. Signal reroute engaged. I even taught it to play elevator music on loop in case they try to trace it." Vrex joined them, holding a disruptor rifle. "Let's make it count." The broadcast went out. Alari stood before the relay's camera, long ears upright, posture straight. Her voice didn't tremble once. "I am Alari of Nyx. You marked this world for purging. You called it unstable, beneath saving. You abandoned it, but it endured, with nothing but grit, broken tech, and stubborn people who know how to fight with frying pans." Matt muttered. "We've upgraded to pipe wrenches now." Alari continued. "I rejected your judgment. I am no longer bound by your orders. If this world is a failure, then I stand with it. You will not erase it." The message ended. Silence followed. No retaliation, no reply. Then the lead ship responded. "Transmission received. Commander Alari of Nyx declared rogue. Planetary audit in progress." Matt raised an eyebrow. "Audit? They gonna send accountants?" Alari frowned. "No, enforcers." 2 dropships descended, sleek and silent. The fight was fast, brutal, glorious. Vrex took down a mech with an EMP grenade shaped like a garden gnome. Matt used the buggy as a battering ram. Alari moved like lightning. Every strike a statement. When the dust cleared, the dropships were in pieces. The sky remained full of ships, but none moved. Then came a final signal. "Purge delay authorized. Audit terminated. Subject Alari designation updated. Exiled sovereign." She let out a breath. "They've backed off for now." Matt sat on the bumper of the buggy, panting. "So we live again. Are they going to send a fruit basket or just ominous silence for the next decade?" "They'll watch. Wait, but Earth is off the purge list." Vrex clapped them both on the shoulders. Well, who's hungry? Later, back at the shelter, Matt stirred a pot of something edible adjacent, while Elari stared up at the stars. They'll never fully trust me again, she said. He handed her a spoon. Good. Means you're officially one of us now. She tasted the stew, paused. This is acceptable. He grinned. Careful, that almost sounded like a compliment. She didn't look at him. You've changed. So have you, he said. You still call me human in that condescending tone, but now I think you might mean it less aggressively. She smirked. I still outrank you. Not in board games. They sat in silence for a while, stars bright, bugs buzzing, and the core humming low in the background. Then she said softly, You saved me. You saved me first. They didn't need to say more. The shelter stood stronger. The sky was quiet, for now. Earth still had its problems, but it also had stubborn survivors, alien outcasts, toaster parts with mystical properties, and a human who baked terrible bread and refused. And Elari, no longer a soldier, no longer a tool of empire, had found something she hadn't expected, a future worth kneeling for once, and standing beside forever. The end.